Hello, everyone. You're watching Political, and it is polling day. It's hard to believe that after 4 years, we're now already on another polling day. But I guess the time flies when you're enjoying unprecedented economic growth and employment. In today's video, we're going to be looking at election day and breaking it down for you. What we can expect to see, when we can expect to see it, and what indicators we should be looking for. If you follow our guide, you can expect to know exactly when Donald Trump will win his second term, if he does at all. You're watching Political. A big thank you to our ever-growing community. You guys are amazing. If you do want to join that community, please do consider subscribing. Leave a like if you do like this content, and leave a comment. Tell us if we're wrong. Tell us if we're right. Just give us your opinion. We like to engage in debates in the comment section. And so I'm going to ask you, Ryan, now to start with, what are we looking for first on election day? What will be the very first thing that we can expect to see?
Well, obviously, because all the polling closes at roughly similar time, somewhere between sort of like 7 and 10 p.m. But you have the different time zones. The first results are obviously going to be on the East Coast. And the first two big states that we're going to be looking at, obviously going to be Florida and North Carolina. They have so far, in terms of their early voting, I think about 80 to 90, maybe even more % of the turnout from 2016 have already voted. In Florida, there's already been 8.5 million votes. These two states, Florida and North Carolina, effectively dump all of the voting that they've done, all the counting that they've done after the polls close, because they're already allowed to start processing the votes now. So in terms of Florida, it's about 8.5 million people have already voted early. So if in Florida, when the results come in, they say, okay, we've counted 8.5 million votes already. Here's the situation. And if Biden is ahead of Trump by sort of anywhere in the sort of region of about 500,000 votes, that indicates that the state is quite close at that moment in time. And in North Carolina, it's a little bit difficult to even determine and read too much into the early votes from there. But in Florida, if we're looking at it and we see when they dump those votes, Biden ahead by 500,000, that probably means it's a tight race. Also, up in the northern part on the East Coast, between New Hampshire and Maine, obviously these are states that you're obviously going to expect Biden to win, but it will give us a good indication of whether or not the polling is right. The problem with those states is they've not got particularly high levels of early voting, so the votes are going to just trickle in over the course of the day. But when you have some counties in Maine or Hampshire that have got full votes in already and they've counted it, you'll be able to compare them to 2016 and have an idea of how like Biden's doing in comparison to Hillary Clinton in key states that might give us an idea of where like the white vote is, for instance.
Okay, and so it's kind of a story with the demographics, as I'm understanding it, right? So, I mean, if we just head back to the South for a second, so if we see Florida and North Carolina, if we see the results looking good for Trump, or at least, Biden only with a slight lead, then can we expect to see Georgia? Can we expect to be safe about that? What do you think?
Well, here's the thing: is that the way the election map is and the way that the toss-ups are this year, if we're not going to be able to know if Trump has won right at the beginning, but we will know if Biden has won right at the beginning. And if the numbers out of North Carolina and North Carolina and Florida that get dumped really early on, if they're really bad for Trump, then the election's basically over at that moment in time, because if Biden wins them, then he's effectively only 10 away, and there's no way that Trump wins all the remaining states. It just seems ridiculous. So, but yeah, if Trump is doing really well in North Carolina and Florida, it's probably an indication that he's doing pretty good in Georgia as well, and maybe winning by a similar margin, if maybe not a little bit more. The problem with Georgia is that the votes they're not going to be dumping a load of votes in one go like they have in North Carolina and Florida. It will be a trickle of votes throughout the night. So we really can't get an actual empirical vote share from Georgia until later on, but we will be able to insinuate whether or not Trump's doing well in there based upon North Carolina and Florida.
Okay. So, I mean, that's the first kind of major region we're looking at, the South, and as you said, Maine and New Hampshire too. What's next then? What's the next big indication we can be seeing?
Well, if we were trying to kind of draw out a pathway here where Trump wins the election, then early on, the votes come in early in Florida and North Carolina. He's doing well there. And if he's doing well there with those early votes that get dumped, like I say, anywhere in the region of like 500,000 after 8.5 million votes have been counted in Florida, shows that it's a tight race, then we can probably assume that if Trump wins them, he's going to win Georgia. After that is going to be Texas, but it's hard to tell what's going to be happening there just because it's going to take a long time for them to count the votes. But again, if he is doing well in these, then we can probably guess that he's doing well in Texas as well, because Texas is kind of like a dream scenario for Biden. And if there's not really a scenario where he wins Texas but loses these, so we can feel pretty good about that. The other one then after that, obviously on the East Coast, is up in the Rust Belt, and again, it's Ohio and Iowa are going to take a bit of time for their votes to come out. They're going to be counting them very slow over the course of the day. And Pennsylvania could even take like a week before we even know who the winner is, because they'll still be counting Democrat votes, until they've got enough, I'm sure. So, and same with Michigan. It's going to take them a while to count their votes. So we're not going to know who's won in Pennsylvania or Michigan. And this is why they say, listen, we're not going to be able to declare the election on election day. And that is right. We won't know for sure unless Trump is winning in, by very, very large margins, similar to 2016. But we will know what's happened in Minnesota and Wisconsin quite early on. So if you have a scenario where Minnesota and Wisconsin go to Trump, or one of them goes to Trump, then we can feel pretty confident that he's won either Michigan or Pennsylvania, in which case he's won the election at that point. But if Minnesota or Wisconsin are like big Biden wins on election night, then we can feel, then we're not going to feel too confident about Michigan and Pennsylvania. If they're really close, then you have a situation where Trump could very well have won in some of the other Rust Belt states. But we will know on election day whether or not he's won Ohio and Iowa, just because of those votes trickle in. So, but in terms of his path then to the presidency, the results that we can potentially know on election day are going to be these states here, and then when we're coming into looking at, it's pretty much going to come down to the Rust Belt at the end of it, and we're going to need to know whether he's won Pennsylvania, but that could take days. But if he has done really well in Minnesota or Wisconsin on election day, then that will give us a good indication of whether or not he's won.
Okay, so I mean, if just kind of recap for the audience then. So the first thing we're looking for is Florida and North Carolina. That will give us an indication of how the South is going to go, more or less. So Trump has to perform well there. And by performing well, we mean only a few 100,000 votes behind in Florida and North Carolina.
Yep.
Then what the next thing we're looking for is these kind of white working class votes, these kind of key demographics in the Rust Belt. So we're looking at Maine, New Hampshire, might give us a slight indication, but more in general, Minnesota and Wisconsin, to kind of paint an image of the Rust Belt and try to see more or less how that will go. And then, of course, the final two battleground states, Ian, it's Nevada and Arizona. So could tell us about them.
Well, it's with Arizona, it's going to be, they're allowed to start processing the votes. I think it was maybe today or yesterday. So let's give me a sec. So in Arizona, they don't even put out the vote. They don't even put out the results until an additional hour after the polls have closed. And then at 10 p.m., we'll get the early and absentee votes cast on the weekend before the election in one big dump. So similar to like North Carolina and Florida. But the thing is, what we'll expect in Arizona, similar basically to all of the other states, or similar to Florida and North Carolina, where we get the dump of the early votes, probably show Biden winning by somewhat of not a considerable margin, but a margin. If it's a huge margin, then he's won the state. If it's a smaller margin where there's enough votes, and what we'll basically be doing is we're saying, are there enough votes left for Trump to take the state over the line? And we'll have an idea based upon the turnout from 2016 and if there's enough votes left for him at that point.
And how will the results in Arizona impact Nevada, if at all?
You'd probably expect if Trump is winning in Arizona by 4 points, he has a chance in Nevada. If Arizona's super tight and Trump only marginally wins it, then he's pretty much got no chance in Nevada at that point. So, but there is, I mean, we just saw today the Trafalgar have Trump winning marginally in Nevada now and winning in Arizona by, I think, like 3 or 4, or I think it's 3. So that is a real possibility. But in terms of Nevada, because they're in the, because obviously their polls close later as well, it's going to be hard. We're not going to know exactly what's happening there until really late on into the night. But if Trump's doing really well in Arizona, it looks like he's on course to win that by like 3 points, then Nevada's definitely in play at that point.
Perfect, thank you. So just to kind of recap one more time. So the first thing we're looking for is the key southern states, Florida and North Carolina. If you want Trump to win, you want Trump to be ever so slightly behind in these states by a couple of 100,000. That's going to be your first indication that things are going well for him. The second thing that's going to be going well for him is looking at Minnesota and Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio, Maine, New Hampshire. If things are looking more or less tight there, if they're looking more or less equal, then we can be quite confident that states such as Michigan will perhaps maybe go into Trump's hands. Pennsylvania, we won't know for a very, very long time, but we can kind of have a vague understanding of what's going on. And then finally, we're looking towards those kind of western states, Arizona. If Trump is taking a slight lead in Arizona, perhaps a strong lead, then that will be the key indication that he will probably be president. So thank you very much for listening. Please do join us later on tonight because we will be live streaming our reaction to the election results and following this through and analysing it at every step. We hope you drop in, even if it's just for 5 minutes to say hello. We'd love to interact with you a bit, say hello to the community. And as always, please do like this, share it if you found it useful, and leave us your opinion down below. Thanks very much, guys. Go and vote today if you haven't already. God bless and good luck.